The SEA Summit for you guys tonight. I'm talking about it more from a practitioner's perspective, what particular areas of the summit were really useful and helpful to me in the ventures that I run over at Catholic Charities Fort Worth. So before I get into that, though, I just kind of want to give you a quick overview of what we do over at Catholic Charities Fort Worth. We're really excited about the social enterprises that we run. We've been in this business for quite some time and have had some really great successes, but we've also had a few hiccups along the way, and we are still working through some of those today. It keeps wanting to go forward. I apologize. So TIN, which is Translation and Interpretation Network, is our longest standing social enterprise at Catholic Charities, and we actually started that as a traditional social service program. We received a grant from the state of Texas to help provide language access services to our clients at Catholic Charities. Once we started doing that, we realized there were a lot of people in our community who could really benefit from the resources that we had available. We started recruiting different refugees and immigrants that have been served through our program to serve as contract interpreters for us. We provided them with the education that they needed to be trained and qualified. And then we started going out and talking with different businesses in the community to see if this was a niche we could get into. It didn't take us long to realize that this was a business model that we could in fact implement. We do have a handful of competitors, but what makes us different is that we focus on the face-to-face interpretation. Most of the competitors who are out there still today, they like the language line. So you're going to go to the hospital, and if you can't speak English, they're going to pick up a telephone and try to interpret it for you on the phone. That is not always the most compassionate way. It doesn't always work the best, and so we really focus on providing that face-to-face interpretation. We also do, of course, translation, which is written word, and then we do a great deal of training and advocacy. Language access is very important. According to Title VI, it says that if you are getting money from the federal government, that you will make a reasonable effort to provide language access, and a lot of people don't really realize what a reasonable effort should be because it's not very clearly defined. So we go out in the community and make certain people understand what that effort should be and make certain that they have the services they need. TIN is over $1 million business. We had planned to earn about $350 this year in net profit. We're going to be over 400, I'm pretty certain. As halfway through the year, we're having a really remarkable year. So we're very pleased with the success of TIN. On the flip side, then we have Worn, which is totally different. It is a fashion line. I'm wearing one of our scarves. It's our bracelet. We decided 2 years ago that there are a lot of refugee women in our community who just really could not get employment. They had so many barriers to employment, whether it be language, their children lived at home, they couldn't afford childcare, they hadn't learned how to drive in the United States, and so they needed to come up with something different. Plus, if they were married, they had a spouse who needed to be out of the house most of the time, earning most of the income for their family. So we realized that we had an opportunity to help them with supplemental income. Worn is not necessarily there to provide the full income for the family, but it really helps make a difference. We're able to help women pay for rent for their family, to help pay for diapers, to help pay for groceries, etc. So we are allowing them to use a traditional skill that they bring from their home country, and they make scarves for us. We do scarves, we do jewelry and bracelets now, and we just recently launched into We Worn, and the joke around the office is that Woof Worn will be coming soon. So we'll see, but anything that you can do knit, we're going to figure out a way to do it so that we can continue to employ these women and continue to give them the opportunities to be self-sufficient and to rise above poverty. So our last venture is new, and I'm still trying to determine how it's going. So it's Urban Manor. What we did is we went out and we purchased a very struggling apartment complex. And we decided we wanted to rehab that apartment complex. We wanted to provide low-income housing, but at a much higher standard than what you find in the community. We are resettling our refugees there. We're opening it up to other nonprofit agencies throughout Fort Worth. If they have clients who cannot get housing, they cannot afford it, their income, there's all these income standards that you have to have a certain amount of income before they'll even consider renting to you. If they have something minor on their background, if they've credit issues, they just cannot find a place to live. And if you don't have housing, there's no way you can deal with your other life issues. So we've opened the doors to 192 units property. We are rehabbing it as fast as we can. We are filling the units as quickly as we can, but we're also providing social services right there on site for free. So we're talking directly to our tenants and we're asking them what they need. Is it financial education? Do they need job readiness? Do they need help learning how to work on the computer? Do they need transportation? And then we're figuring out a way to make certain we're bringing those services directly to them. We don't anticipate that Urban Manor is going to be a huge profit generator, but it's definitely a break even or a little bit higher, but it is serving a huge need in Fort Worth, and it's really making a difference in the lives of the individuals. So that being said, I went to SEA Summit, and I wanted to hear directly from other people who are facing the same kind of problems I have. Sometimes when you're in social enterprise, you don't think anybody understands you. Nobody deals with the same problems that you have. This whole mission versus profit thing is your worry and nobody else's. So for me, the best part about SEA was learning that everybody had the exact same problems that I did, and it wasn't unique. That was very reassuring. So today I'm going to talk about the specific sessions that I went into and give you some key tips that I learned from those sessions. By no means am I going into all the details in each of the sessions. I'm just going to touch on some of the high points. They're going to tie really well with Suzanne's presentation. She talked about that macro view of what happened at SEA and what the key topics were, and these sessions tied in with nitty-gritty details about those big view issues. So we're going to talk a little bit about scaling. I want to talk a little bit about pro bono. I went to a specific session that talked about hiring and really addressed that overhead issue. Now it doesn't want to go. Okay. Okay, hopefully that makes it work. Okay, and then I went to a couple of sessions that were specific to two businesses. One was Housing Works out of New York, and they were talking about thrift. So I want to share some specific examples of things that worked for a retail enterprise. And then I also went to an alternative staffing organization session, and they were talking more about that service side. That is a huge challenge for us at Catholic Charities. We have service industry social enterprise, and we have retail social enterprise, and they're very different. And all the great lessons we learned from 10 have not applied one iota to what we've done at Warren. So it was really encouraging to hear directly from these people who have faced the same challenges. And then I want to end it with Aaron Hurst gave a pretty good overview of what are just the key lessons for a social entrepreneur. He is so interesting, and he looked just like Johnny Depp. It just cracked me up. Kept staring at him. A funnier, well, no, Johnny Depp's pretty funny. Okay, this is not working anymore, so we're going to go here. I think the battery may have died. We have no more, there's no light on here. Okay, so lessons in scaling. I attended a session where they talked primarily about the idea of scaling up your organization. So how do you take an organization from small to big? This is something that we face all the time at Catholic Charities. We have worn and we are knitting scarves and trying to sell them throughout Texas. And right now our big talk is how do we become national? Well, when you have a staff of 2 and you try to become national, it's pretty tricky. So I really wanted to hear what they had to say about scaling. This particular session really focused on the idea that you really needed to determine, I didn't touch anything. Sorry, we're having a hard time here. Okay. That you really need to determine what was important in terms of scaling. Nonprofits, I think we talked earlier a little bit about the whole idea of overhead and the whole idea of what is important to a nonprofit. Well, when you're in a social enterprise and a nonprofit, you focus a lot on that concept of reach, and you don't always focus on some of those other areas in which you could scale up your business. I mean, of course, we're always very focused on how we can help our clients, but the impact, it gets lost in the idea that we're going to become that golden ticket for the agency. And so this was really interesting. Do you want to look at impact if you're scaling up your organization? And if you're looking at impact, you want to think about the quality and the breadth of your services, the depth of the impact that you're making. We talked about scope, whether or not the breadth and the value chain of your business was right. We talked about reach again, which is your numbers and your demographics and your locations and all that. And then we talked about equity. Were you providing that particular business to all the people that you could be providing it to or just a group of people. And so the lessons that we learned from this were really interesting. Like I said, REACH becomes the number one thing that we talk about at Catholic Charities, and trying to help the leadership there. Remember, there are so many other things that our social enterprises are doing on a day-to-day basis. Let's stop looking just at the numbers and start focusing on the amazing impact that we're making in people's lives. So, they went on after that. Once you pick out what you want to scale up, then we started talking through this whole idea of how do you actually scale up and what is important to make it successful. So all the things we talked about, reach and impact and equity, those are all important things that you have to think about, but you have to think about the sustainability is really important, the cost and the time. I can't tell you how many times when we're having that conversation at Catholic Charities about how we're going to become nationwide, that cost and time is not even figured. We decided to implement a fashion line, and we were going to be nationwide in 6 months. I mean, so it's very interesting to hear the lessons learned from people who are actually doing this compared to what is really happening. Something that I thought was interesting is I think that there is a ghost here who just really wants to move forward. Clearly it's a boring presentation. Okay, so they spent a lot of time talking about this whole concept of capacity versus capability and how it's important for an organization to understand that you have both. They're not the same thing, and sometimes those words become interchangeable and we don't realize that they're two different things. So of course, capacity being the ability of your organization to deliver at that scale, and capability being the ability to deliver and implement that program with fidelity and quality. Okay, so mechanisms for scaling. This is something Suzanne mentioned earlier when you look at what JUMA's doing. I found this part really interesting. TEN has really struggled lately over how do we become bigger and better. And we have Catholic Charities all over the country calling us, wanting to learn from the lessons that we've learned because it's so successful there. The idea of replicating to the other organizations and creating that franchise model was like a light bulb moment for us. Whether it works or not for TEN, it was so neat to hear about other organizations doing it, whether it was Catalyst Kitchens or JUMA, and how they made it happen. Of course, other mechanisms is just pure expansion, going other places. Collaboration, of course, is a model that we talk about a lot, is how we can partner with the other places and do it together. And then this whole virtual demand-driven idea was something we've never thought about, and frankly, because you spend so much time talking about the resources, we probably wouldn't do, but putting your model out there on the internet for free and just letting anybody have it and replicate it in their community. Again. Okay, so, and again, how do you go about scaling? Well, you scale up your organization through your advocacy, through your fundraising, and then that capacity and capability building. So that is the lessons that we walked away with from Catholic Charities in terms of scaling. Pro bono, I thought, was one of the most interesting sessions that I attended. It was Taproot. Aaron Hurst again was doing this, as well as a Billion Plus Change. I don't think we ever thought of the idea that we could go out there to a Deloitte and Touche and see if they would come and help us for free. That was a really big light bulb moment for us. The concept that we are recruiting volunteers each and every day, and we have an amazing workforce of volunteers, but thinking that we could go to the pro bono and get 500 times the output that we would get from a regular volunteer was really exciting. So some of the things that we learned through this, of course, is that even though it's working essentially with a volunteer, a professional volunteer, you still go at it with the MOU. You need to make certain there's some kind of formal agreement in place to see what you want to have at the end of the day, but also what the organization wants. I thought the concept that they shared with us of looking for an advocate was genius. If we were doing this on our own and somebody told us to go and look for pro bono, we would have just gone to an organization to see if they were interested in helping Catholic Charities. But if you can find somebody in that organization who wants to champion your cause and carry it forward, they're going to treat you like you're any other client. And that is an amazing value add. So that's something we're doing right now with Catholic Charities, is looking at WARN. Marketing is a huge issue for any kind of nonprofit social enterprise. We just don't have the resources to put into it the way we want to, and we want our marketing to be successful. We want it to be professional. We want to look like any other brand you'd find at Neiman Marcus. And so doing that ourselves is extremely challenging. This idea of going out and getting somebody who can champion that cause is really exciting. So just some typical areas in which you might be able to look for pro bono if you in fact have a social enterprise that you're running is legal, HR, the marketing, business models, cost structure. They talked about scaling, capacity development, etc. All right. So defining the project scope. This is going back to the whole concept of pro bono work. We have never gone to this readiness roadmap before. We had been to this conference. So again, just simple things. This is what we walked away from Catholic Charities, is some of these really simple things that we might have learned somewhere, but we got to learn a whole bunch of things all at one time that are really going to help us with our business. Since then, we've gone through this exercise. It's helped us learn what we could go about in terms of pro bono work, and it's helping to engage the leadership as well at the organization about what's important. Some other lessons that they shared with us is make certain, if you are interested in pro bono, that you go in there and you ask general questions. You don't tell them exactly what you want, exactly how they should do it. Pro bono workers are going to be much more engaged in the process if they get to come to the table and tell you, this is what you should do, this is how I think we should implement the plan. You have to be willing to give over some of the control in the process, but at the end of the day, you're going to get a great product. All right, so why companies participate was a huge question for many of the individuals in the audience, because of course you can't understand why anybody would want to give their time freely. But this attracts their employees, it is doing the right thing, it engages employees. In fact, they gave us this statistic about how engaged employees produce 40% more in profit and 178% higher in revenues, which is pretty remarkable. So we walked away knowing that we did not need to be afraid of engaging individuals in pro bono work, and hopefully by this time next year we'll have something at Catholic Charities. So lessons in hiring. This is one that I'm still working on. I need to find some time to sit down with the leadership and the HR director at Catholic Charities and kind of talk through some of the things that we learned. Nonprofit entrepreneurs, we tend to fill vacancies. We don't tend to look for the right fit, the great human capital. We don't always spend our time and energy talking about how we can develop the capital. We just need the numbers. We just need that warm body in the chair. And I'll tell you, we've had turnover in business ventures over at Catholic Charities in the last 6 months. 3 of our managers have moved on to bigger or better positions. All good turnover, but because of those holes, my immediate thought was, I just need to fill these positions. And then after going to this conference, I realized that is not the best way to approach this. It's just going to cost us more money and more time in the long run. So some of the lessons that they shared with us was the importance of knowing your market, knowing what it is that you are trying to hire for, the characteristics, the challenge. Understanding that market really helps you recognize talent when they walk through your door. We talked a lot about the concept of an ideal candidate and creating what an ideal candidate looks like and then searching for it. Kind of stop thinking necessarily, job descriptions are important, but don't spend all your time thinking about the job description. Instead, think about that candidate who's going to fill the position and excel in that particular position. So some of our common mistakes is that we don't always spend the time evaluating an applicant based on their skills and the expertise that they're going to bring to the job. We see this a lot at Catholic Charities. We have a lot of really fantastic employees there, and you could be fantastic in one area and not so great in another area. And so making certain that we're really thinking through, what is this position, what is the ideal candidate, and does this person who's truly great have the right fit to be that ideal candidate? We also tend to sometimes pass up on a candidate and miss out on that candidate because we think there's some other great candidates out there that we haven't seen yet, and so they really cautioned against that. And then making a selection from a big pool of candidates, interviewing several people instead of, if you see a resume that looks fantastic, run with it. And so I feel like these are all great lessons that we could learn at my particular agency in general. But The other thing we talked about a lot was this concept of an employer brand. And Catholic Charities, we love to talk about our mission, and our mission is amazing, and we are doing good work every day. But as an organization, we've kind of gotten hung up on the idea that people are going to come to work for us because we have a spectacular mission. And they really talked a lot about how mission does not necessarily recruit the individual. It might help keep the individual there, but that is not what's going to bring your great talent in the door. Instead, you need to focus on the brand for your as an organization. What is our brand? If they go out in the community and they talk to their friends or they talk to other businesses, are they going to hear good things about your organization? Are they going to hear that you work them too hard? Are they going to hear that you don't pay enough, that you have terrible benefits? On the flip side, are they going to hear those wonderful things about you? You're family friendly, and it's a great family at work, and they have a lot of fun. So the whole concept, work hard, play hard, that's a brand, whereas, we get stuck on our mission being our brand. So I really hope that that's another thing that we will actually be able to implement at Catholic Charities, is take that lesson and really figure out a way to implement it throughout the entire organization. Particularly for me in general, is we hire all of our venture, our social enterprise employees through Catholic Charities, so they work for Catholic Charities, but they're doing work with TIN, or they're doing work with Warren. Well, it's very helpful for us to be able to promote the brand of our venture, but also the brand of Catholic Charities. So we'll really be working through that as we go forward in the future. Target and pursue, of course, that's a pretty general lesson, but just the idea of making certain that you really are having a systematic approach to hiring, and that you're constantly recruiting, and that you're not just having, this was my favorite word or phrase that I heard there, was candidate crush. You find somebody, you think they're great, they're interested in your organization, so you're going to give them the job, even though that may not be the right job for them. That is really common, I think, in social services. And then, of course, evaluating your hires afterwards. Okay, so the next session that I attended was the session on thrift, and this session is really focused on the concept of retail entrepreneurship as opposed to service entrepreneurship. And what I really got from this particular session was the idea that we need to spend more time thinking through the product, the people, and the profitability for the business, and really understand those to grow our business. When we went forward with Warren, we started with a scarf. And although the idea of a knit scarf is fantastic, in Texas that particular product was not necessarily the product that was going to sell. And so as we move forward with our social enterprises at Catholic Charities, we are really trying to learn from that lesson of spending time thinking through the product. Does this product make sense? Are there people who want it? Is there a need for it? Is this going to get people excited? I get excited every time I see the Warren scarves because I'm amazed at what you can do with knitting and crochet, and it's beautiful, but I don't want to wear them because I'm hot, which is why we have bracelets. It's fantastic. So, thinking through what your customer wants and sourcing for your customer as opposed to just giving them whatever it is you think they want is a really important thing that we walked away. And then pricing for the product and not necessarily for your client as a nonprofit social enterprise is a really challenging lesson. We continue to face that with Warren. We face it every day with fellow employees telling us that our scarves are priced too high, that we're not able to sell them to the clients, when we really have understood over time that the purpose of this is to help empower our clients and to give them ownership into this business, but it's not necessarily because we expect them to turn around and buy the scarf. The scarf is for a different group of customers. People, again, just kind of ties back to that, but truly knowing your people. I think one of the most common fallacies in retail for social entrepreneurship is that because you are a philanthropy, so to speak, people are going to buy you. Every venture at Catholic Charities was started with that mindset is, and Warren, I read it all over the business plan when I came. It was already written. I was looking over it, and every single thing that they said about Warren was people are going to buy it because they love the cause. That may be true for a very small portion of the people. Loving the cause just makes it easier to spend the money. It's not why you buy the product. And so that was really an important concept that they shared a lot at the session that I was at, and you could see people's heads just nodding in the audience. Exactly, that's how it is. So we will go ahead and move on to The service enterprises. This again was the alternative staffing organization section that I attended, and the focus here was really more on if you're going to make your service enterprise stand out and be used by your community, you need to do some specific things. Again, I kind of referenced back because Suzanne gave such a good overview that kind of touched on all the little points that we walked away with as an organization. But if you're not professional and if you're not delivering a superior product and you're not delivering it at the same price as your competitors, then nobody's going to use it. It doesn't matter how great the cause is. So what they really recommended is that you spend some time, that you study your market, you find your niche, you learn your customer's business, and this is something we do each and every day with TIN, and I truly believe it's why we're successful, is if we have to spend time in healthcare, we've learned what healthcare is all about. I think that's one of the reasons why, going back to my strange background, when I applied for this job, they were like, oh, you came from hospitals. I just needed out of hospitals, which is why I came here, and this is so much better. But it is very, very, very helpful to have that institutional knowledge of the business that you want to do. I will say that's one of the areas where we really fell short when we moved into the apartment industry. We have some experience with HUD. We have 4 apartment complexes that are HUD funded, that are focused on seniors and the disabled. We are in a totally different world with the complex that we have. And we didn't have the institutional knowledge. We didn't learn from other people before we purchased the apartment complex, and now we're just kind of spinning our wheels getting to the next step. We're going to get there. It's going to be amazing when it's done, but the amount of time that it's taking us to get to the end product is a little bit more than we would have liked. So I cannot reiterate how important it is to truly understand the business, truly understand what your customer is needing. We spent a lot of time talking about listening to your customers' needs. This one I thought was fascinating, is this idea of leveraging your sponsors and your partner organizations. And what they were talking about here specifically was, first you have to listen to your customers, and your customers are not always just the people who are purchasing your product, but they can be your employees as well. And when you listen to your employees and you want to keep good, engaged employees, and you want to make certain you have the best talent, sometimes you have to spend a little extra money. You need to provide them training. You need to make certain they have the right resources. And what they recommended is that you go to partners and sponsors that you already have who are trainings, for instance. If you have some individuals who need to learn some aspect of their job, and the partner down the street is already offering that training, surely they can open up 3 or 4 spots for your employees. We never think to do that. And so from a business standpoint, there are a million different things that we would like to teach the staff that work for Warren or TIN or Urban Manor. At Warren, I go back to marketing all the time. That is such an important thing that we need, and we need so much more than we're able to do. If I could find a way to spend the money to give some of our staff the training that they need, it would help. It wouldn't solve all our problems, but it would totally help. This was a very interesting idea because we have a lot of engaged marketing firms who really love Catholic Charities. They love what they do, and so we're going to start working with them directly to see what they would be willing to partner with us on. Okay, so I am almost done. My side was short and sweet, and I'm so thankful. So everybody's got to be getting tired and hungry. But to conclude the presentation, I wanted to spend just a little bit of time going over the 11 lessons that Aaron Hurst left us with. And I think I wrote 10 because his 11th lesson, I felt like you should just kind of put it on a slide by itself. So that's why it says 10 up there. So many of these concepts have already been talked about, and I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir in so many respects, but again, for me as a practitioner, what is nice is just knowing that everybody is in the same boat, and we are all trying to figure this out as we go along, and we have matured and we've made it a long way, but there's still so many things that we can learn from each other. So this concept of tension is critical to success. Hire people who are going to challenge you and make your job a little bit tricky, but also get you to the next step. If you have a bunch of just yes ma'am, no ma'am people in your organization who are just going to do exactly what you want, you're not going to be able to take that social enterprise where it needs to go. We've really spent a lot of time doing that over the last couple of years with TIN in particular. We made some big changes in sales, and we have a salesman in there now who constantly challenges the manager or myself on ideas that we have, and it's because of those challenges that TIN is doing so amazingly well this year. So I can't reiterate that one either enough. Hire ambitious talent and then let them stretch. This goes back to the whole idea that you need to hire for goals, you need to hire for that ideal candidate, not just for the words on the job description. And get that person in there, give them a role, give them a mandate, and then let them run with it, and you will be amazed at what they can do. And I think one of the things that he said is to tell all of your employees on day one that you are encouraging them to help the organization make history. I thought that was a pretty remarkable statement. I'm going to try that with my next new hire. Create that strong and simple hook. People like simplicity. They like to know that they are solving a problem, so just tell them what it is. Tell it very simply. Don't make it too big and too huge. Again, nonprofits, I think we have the tendency, because we do such great work and we do so many different things, Catholic Charities has 40 programs, is we want to throw every single thing that we do in those 40 programs into our statement about why you should buy WARN. And that just simply doesn't make sense when all you need to say is we empower refugee women, or we change refugee women's lives. And that's what's going to make a difference. Design matters. This one is a big holdup for me. It goes back to overhead again, is that you have to make yourself be professional. You have to stand out just like any other organization. And just because you're a nonprofit, you can't go out there and say, I can't spend the money. You have to find a way to make certain everything you put in the public's eye looks professional, it's neat, it's clear, it's concise, it's engaging, it's energetic. I mean, you have to compete with any other business. So when I look at WARN, I think we have to be just as good as any other product that you're going to find at a high-end retailer, because our prices are high-end. So when I first started WARN, we had our hang tags, and they were just tied in a knot because it was kitschy. So that that was one of our exciting changes, is that we actually had hang ties attached to our product. And it seems really simple, but it took us from a garage business to a real business. It was just one little simple look. Be resourceful, going back to the concept of using pro bono or using your partners. Don't be cheap, be resourceful. There's a lot of things you can do if you can figure out the people who can help you get there. Ask for help when you need it. Partner with those organizations. One of the things I thought was really interesting was he was talking about how if you need to make a sale and the individual you're trying to make a sale to needs something else, then go to that other company and partner together and make the sale together. I thought that really could be applicable for us in TIN. It's great because there are sometimes things that we can't deliver but other people can. And if we go at it together, we're both going to win in the long run. Focus on being a shark, not a guppy. It's not about survival. I like that one too. Be inspired by a no. If somebody says no, then your next question should be, what do I need to do to get a yes? I tried that today. That was fantastic. Again, don't confuse your organization's survival with success. If the organization is there and it's continuing to be there, but it's not doing much else, I don't think you could consider that organization a success. Don't give your budgets too much power. Of course, another one that I'm working really hard on at Catholic Charities is we have a budget, and it's a fantastic roadmap, and it's very important for us to look at what we're spending and make certain we're keeping our spending in line. But if we have to spend the money to get the business to the next step, then we really should spend the money. And then lastly, the one I like is fail fast and fail often. Aaron talked about this forever, so I'm just going to talk about it for about 2 seconds. But since I've been at Catholic Charities in a year and a half, I've had to learn what social enterprise is. I've had to learn what translation business was. I've had to learn about fashion retailing, and I don't have any fashion sense. And now I'm learning about apartments. And the one thing I can tell you is the concept of failing fast and failing often works. If you fail and you realize you fail, make the change, reassess, and fix it. Learn from your experience, because you can always get to the next step. You get hung up on that failure and you think that it's over. It's not. We have so much room to grow and so much room to develop. So I love that line, and we use it pretty much every day in my group. So that is pretty much everything that I had to say. Like I said, I gave you a really quick touch on several different sessions and just really focused on the lessons that I felt like were important for my organization. If you have any questions specifically about any of these areas, just like Suzanne, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to share the information. I'm happy to share slides if I have them. I would encourage you as a practitioner to attend the summit next year. I was a little bit of a naysayer, I will say. I wasn't sure what it was going to be like, and I was really glad that I went. I felt like every single session that I walked into, I learned something valuable that I could then go and use in the businesses that we run here in Fort Worth or Dallas. So that's it. So I'm happy to answer questions if anyone has any. Either that or, like I said, everybody's hungry and it's late.